Hey guys, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about appeasement and something called the Munich Pact. We're taking a look at this period leading into World War II, where the major powers of Europe and the countries that were involved in the League of Nations gave in to Hitler at kind of a lower level to try to avoid this larger conflict down the road. That's called appeasement. And sometimes appeasement works. Sometimes if you kind of give in to the bully here, you don't actually have to fight him. Sometimes appeasement kicks that problem down the road and makes it a much bigger problem, which, as we know from historical hindsight, is what happened with World War II. Now, it's really easy to judge when you're on this side of history, when you know how it played out. We know that Hitler was this crazy dictator. We know about the Holocaust and that kind of thing. But in the mid to late 1930s, they didn't know that yet. They thought he was just an aggressive leader. He had done a lot of really good things for the German economy. I'm not trying to approve of what Hitler was doing, but the Nazi Party had done a lot to turn around the economy. In fact, in 1938, about a year and a half before World War II started, Hitler was named as Time Magazine's Man of the Year. Again, we didn't know yet as a world community what Hitler would turn out to be. So, as Hitler is being aggressive and he's breaking the Treaty of Versailles and he's pushing out and pressuring these other countries, namely Austria, which he took over because he said there's German-speaking people there. It was part of this thing he called Anschluss, which is a German word that means union. The countries of the League of Nations, and namely Britain and France and these other major nations, kept warning him, kept doing economic sanctions, but they really didn't want to go to war again. They were war weary, they were in the middle of this global depression, and they just wanted it to stop. And he seemed to have gone too far when he pushed to take a major chunk, about half of the nation of Czechoslovakia. And Czechoslovakia was very tight with Great Britain. And the Prime Minister of Great Britain, Neville Chamberlain, stepped up and said, okay, that's too far. And it looked like, okay, now something's going to happen. And so he met with Hitler in Munich and basically told Czechoslovakia, we're not going to let him take this major chunk of your country called the Sudetenland, right? Now, I'm going to kind of paraphrase the conversation. I'm sure it didn't go down like this, but just to make it very quick. So basically, Chamberlain says to Hitler, hey, you've gone too far. You can't just take the Sudetenland. You just can't do that. And Hitler says, hey, look, the Sudetenland has some German-speaking people in it. It's the last thing I want. If you give me that, I will do an end to territorial aggression and we'll have peace in Europe. And Chamberlain was like, really? Like, that's it? We don't have to go any further? And Hitler was like, yes, I promise. Cross my heart, hope to die, stick under nails in my eye. And Chamberlain was like, that's fantastic. And so they signed this agreement or a pact in Munich. This was called the Munich Pact, that Hitler and Germany would get this major chunk of Czechoslovakia called the Sudetenland, and Hitler promised to be done. And when news of that hit, Chamberlain is this hero all over Europe in particular. Like, this is great. We don't have to have a second major world conflict. He was popular in most places. One country where he was not very popular would have been Czechoslovakia. I can't imagine how that conversation went down. Chamberlain is like, hey, Czechoslovakia, I got good news and I got bad news. And they're like, great. We are happy to hear that you didn't give away our country. And Chamberlain was like, well, that's the thing. The good news is that we are probably not going to have another major world conflict. I'm like, great. What's the bad news? The bad news is I gave Hitler half your country. Now, I don't know how you do that. Czechoslovakia is probably thinking you've got to be joking, right? But that's what happened. And so Chamberlain goes back to England, and when he lands, he's so popular as he's getting off his plane, there's literally crowds of people like chanting his name, right? And he holds up this document, this Munich Pact, and he says very famously, I have achieved peace in our time. And people are like, yes, you're the best. You're awesome. We don't have to have this major war. And so for about 6 weeks, he is like crazy popular and famous. And it's interesting how history can flip, because 6 weeks later, Hitler totally breaks the Munich Pact and invades the rest of Czechoslovakia. and we would be on this path to war. And so, like I said, history flips because all these people are like, yeah, Chamberlain, you're the best. You're awesome. What Hitler did, you suck. We never liked that idea. And Chamberlain suddenly becomes the donkey. In fact, in his legacy, he's remembered as the guy that got duped by Hitler. And because we all know now who Hitler was, we see Chamberlain as kind of this idiot, right? This guy that just, I can't believe that he fell for it. And that's a major part of his legacy. And things can shift very quickly when it comes to history. And so that's the basic story of appeasement, giving in to a bully to avoid a larger conflict, and the Munich Pact, which is seen as being the peak of appeasement. History can be a brutal thing. Just ask Neville Chamberlain. Hopefully, it's better for you.